Hi, and welcome back to Ron Hasn't Seen. Tonight I'm talking about Bridge on the River Kwai, the 1957 film directed by David Lean, starring Sir Alec Guinness, William Holden, Sasue Hayakawa, hope I got that right, and Jack Hawkins. The film won the Oscar for Best Picture, along with directing for Lean, Best Actor for Guinness, Best Adapted Screenplay for Michael Wilson and Carl Foreman, and Pierre Boulez, the author of the original 1952 novel the film was based on. It also won Best Cinematography for Jack Hilliard, Best Film Editing for Peter Taylor, and Best Original Score for Malcolm Arnold, which incorporated the famous Colonel Bogey March, which is probably what the film's most known for. Hayakawa also received a nomination for Best Supporting Actor. The film centers around the construction and destruction of a bridge on the Burma Railway, which the Japanese constructed during World War II. It is a fictional story placed in the middle of the real-life events. Guinness stars as Colonel Nicholson, a very by-the-book British soldier. He's a colonel captured by the Japanese after he was ordered to surrender his regiment. Holden plays an American naval commander, Shears, who is already in the POW camp when the British forces are marched in. The camp is remote and doesn't have any kind of stockade. It relies on the jungle to be the prison walls. Hayakawa is the Japanese Colonel Saito, and he's tasked with building part of the railway using the prisoners. Nicholson refuses to let his officers be used as manual labor because it's against the Geneva Convention and keeps confronting Saito with the book, but he does seem perfectly fine letting his enlisted men be forced to help the enemy. He refuses to let his men try and escape because they were ordered to surrender to the Japanese, and I guess he thinks that's part of the grand plan. So afterwards, he's put in solitary confinement box for not ordering his officers to work, and his officers are also put in a punishment hut, until Saito comes up with a way to kind of save face and compromise, allowing the officers to administer and oversee the construction, which Nicholson is all too eager to do in order to give his men a task to keep them busy. While this was going on, Shears attempted to escape and did escape, but the two soldiers that went with him were shot and killed, and he was injured and then nursed back to health by a local village before setting sail out to sea to look for a rescue. And then back at the camp, Nicholson is not only helping, but is going out of his way to improve the bridge design, despite some of his men questioning his complicity in helping the Japanese soldiers. Shears is now recovering in a hospital in Ceylon when he's approached by Major Warden, played by Hawkins. Warden wants to use Shears' knowledge of the area to help his commando squad blow up the bridge, but it turns out Shears wasn't a commander and was impersonating the officer for better treatment. He agrees to help after his crime is kind of overlooked, and he's instated as a major in the British Army as part of the commando force on loan from U.S. Navy. They do parachute in, and with the help of the villagers, track down the bridge and set the explosives. And they set them to detonate just as the first train is set to cross the bridge, so they could take out the train too. But Nicholson notices the explosives via a wire and tracks down the commandos and alerts the Japanese to their presence, getting Shears and most of the team killed. But kind of realizing what he's done, he falls on the detonator at the end, right as he dies, and blows up the bridge as the train crosses. I knew a little about this film. I kind of knew the basic concept, knew it kind of was a prisoner of war movie, knew it was a commando squad blowing it up. I kind of thought the plots were a little more together than they ended up being. But I probably first heard of the movie in We Didn't Start the Fire, the Billy Joel song. And I think not seeing it was just an oversight, maybe due to its almost 3-hour runtime. I just didn't decide to watch it. The film was shot in Ceylon, which we now know as Sri Lanka. It really uses the jungles well, and the whole film is among gorgeous landscape. And really, it just adds a level of verisimilitude to the film. Though the screenplay was adapted by Foreman and Wilson, they were on the Hollywood blacklist and worked on the project secretly while living in England. Their names were added to the award in 1984 when it kind of came out when it became more acceptable for them to be on it. Charles Laughton was the original choice for Nicholson, but couldn't take the role for physical reasons. And Holden received one of the biggest paychecks ever for an actor at the time, getting $300,000 for the film, plus 10% of the gross. And that's a $2.8 million budget and a $30 million gross. So he came out with a good portion of the money this movie made, and a good portion of its budget, too. Lean apparently had some troubles with the British actors on the set. They just didn't seem to get along. And he also complained he was forced to add a romance scene between Shears and the nurse at the hospital, basically because the studio said there weren't enough white women in the film, or no white women in the film. The Colonel Bogey March did not originate with the film, and actually dated back to 1914. But this was really the first time it was featured in a film, and I probably grew up knowing the song from Spaceballs with the dink dink, dink 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 dink. That's enough of that. While the film is historically set, the real construction was done using POW labor. It did not really have the collaborators, and that kind of upset a lot of British POWs and stuff that saw them being presented this way. They really did sabotage and add delays as part of standard practice, and the actual kind of person that Nicholson kind of took the place of was Lieutenant Colonel Philip Toucey, and they really saw this as an insult to him in particular, when he was one who was kind of running the delays and making his men do those things. Bull, who was a French POW in Thailand, said he created the character as a combination of some French collaborators in his camp, so he did see something, but it wasn't the British. The film was great. It really was a great World War II film, and I really do like World War II films, so having not seen this was one of those ones that surprised a lot of people. But I will say, I guess you're supposed to hate Nicholson. It's kind of hard, for me to suddenly hate Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I did by the end of the film. Just seeing him as a collaborator, even though he's just kind of misguided, is kind of the way they present him at the very end, but I don't think it's a real redemption arc. I think it's just a weird presentation of somebody being overly British, in my opinion. But he was great in the role. He played it so well, and it became iconic, and it's part of how he became Sir Alec Guinness. The rest of the movie, it's well acted. Saito was a well-presented commander. He was seen as kind of brutal in the film, but not overly so. He didn't seem to punish arbitrarily, things like that. He was acted fantastically as well. I really enjoyed the scene in the camp. And the movie is really kind of split in the first half with the camp and then the second half with the commandos. And that's kind of what surprised me, was I didn't realize it was kind of a Full Metal Jacket, two kind of movies put together. But it really made the movie flow well. I don't think there's anything really negative to say about the film. It's well acted. It's well paced for being as long as it is. It holds your attention. A little bit towards the end of the camp, before you start getting back to Shears and the Commando Squad, it can start to drag, just from the nature of you're not seeing any action, you're just kind of seeing construction. So it's a little weird, but the film isn't an action film. It's a good war drama more than anything. And, the fact that Holden already played a POW in Stalag 17, I think that was a good choice to kind of bring somebody like that in here. And I really do think about The Great Escape, and that's what came to mind during a lot of these prison scenes, thinking about that whole force to escape, or it's your duty to escape. And, just from the very off, Holden being against that kind of makes you think negatively about his character. So the film is crafted well in that, it's, it gives you that emotional grip on who these characters are right from the beginning and takes you through them. And, maybe you're supposed to have a little sympathy. I felt more sympathy for Saito than Nicholson, just because of the way the characters are presented. But overall, it's a great film. A little long, but worth it. I would strongly recommend it. And that kind of brings to the end my month of Great Movie Ride, or a little more than a month now of Great Movie Ride movies. And I'm going to be moving full on into musicals for the next one with The Music Man. One I'd never seen a stage production or the movie before. So it's going to be interesting going into that blind. So that's it for this episode of Ron Hasn't Seen. If you like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe below. If you don't, please let me know in the comments why. And thank you, and have a good night.